Thank you very much for your participation, for your interest in our project, in our organization, the Austrian Trade Union Federation, ÖGB. And also thank you very much for taking the time to be here. This is a big thank you
Sich
to
einzuloggen. Ich bedanke mich bei unseren geschätzten Gästen und ich
interpreters in advance for their help. We did manage to turn this into an international seminar, which is in fact excellent. And yes, we were hoping that it would be, because we do have, this is made possible through our project DiDaNet, which is Digital Danube Network, a project of the Austrian Trade Union Federation. As you can see from my square, my name is Tanya Vikas, and I'm responsible for the project in the international department of ÖGB, and I'm very pleased to have you here. We thought that this seminar would be an interesting way to enlarge our network of people interested in solidarity economics, not an economics of greed. And so we're very happy that this seminar has such a good turnout, and to welcome like-minded individuals. Yes, perhaps without further ado, I will introduce our first guest, but perhaps I will give you a few technical details. By taking part of this, we hope that you are okay with us recording this seminar. So please, maybe a show of hands if you're okay with that. Thank you so much. This is excellent, because this will really help us when we hand in the project details to our sponsor. Also, we will be making a few pictures, and we hope also that that's okay. So maybe a short show of hands that that's okay. Thank you. We'll only take the best pictures where everybody looks great, promise. So yes, and we will also have two hosts today. Robert Walasinski is also an expert on our project. He was responsible for founding the Works Council of then Foodora, now Miam, and we were very lucky to win him over to our project. He will be guiding you through this seminar today, and also Blaj Joya, who we also could win for this project. Blaj is also our technical expert in the project, who is also a former, or maybe, yeah, perhaps again, a rider for Miam, but hopefully under better circumstances, thanks to our project. So yes, perhaps without further ado, I would like to hand over the seminar, give the floor to our first guest, Christian Kazara, who's journalist and author of a book on co-ops and their impact on work and society. I'll put the link into the chat for those who want to look for the book. So Christian, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, Robert told me it's okay that I speak in German as you're going to translate it. Thank you. That makes it much easier for me, actually. Because I recently discovered, explaining to a friend of mine, that I missed some of the vocabulary necessary for the whole thing. Yeah, so I'm gonna switch to German.
Perfect.
Also, herzlichen Dank für die Einladung. Ja, ich soll sozusagen hier einen kleinen Überblick geben.
I'm supposed to give a short overview of the top
Verwaltung. Kurz zu mir, ich arbeite als Lektor bei der APA, bei der Austria Presseagentur, und bin seit 5, 6
I'm a member of the Austrian Press Agency, and I've been a journalist for 5 years. For 2 years, I worked as the Austrian correspondent of a German newspaper. In the last year, I worked on the topic of cooperatives and self-management. I also published a book. And during the last 2-3 years. I did a lot of research, and now I have about 25 minutes, and I'm going to try to give you an overview in the next 10 to 15 minutes on some of the things that I found out. And then we will have 10 minutes for discussion, questions, or embarrassing silence in the worst case. I started researching this topic in 2016 and 2017. Back then, I stumbled across a problem. There are a lot of books that are dealing with the history or the legal foundations of self-management and cooperatives, how to found a cooperative, what other legal forms are there of economic democracy, and so on. But what I was missing, what I couldn't find, was a sort of collection of best practices. So a collection of examples of how this could actually work and in what direction it could develop. I talked about this topic with a lot of different people. There's a big prejudice going around that the topic of democratic self-governance is only possible in very small projects or very small enterprises of maybe 5 to 10, 15 people at a maximum. At a very, very early point during my research, I found out that this isn't true at all. The 7th largest industry manufacturing, Mondragon in Spain, has thousands of employees, and they still manage to organize themselves democratically, more or less, at least when you compare it to a usual enterprise. And I would like to start with Mondragon right away. As I said before, it's the 7th largest industry company in Spain. It's a conglomerate of different cooperatives. So it's not just one, it's a sort of umbrella organization that includes about 100 smaller cooperatives. All of these cooperatives have committed to adhering to certain democratic principles and standards. So they elect representatives of the companies, of the cooperatives that are then sent into the umbrella organization and so on. Mondragon developed in the course of the Spanish Civil War. It is located in a small city, also called Mondragon or Arasate in Basque. It has about 10,000 inhabitants, and all of us probably know about the atrocities of the Spanish Civil War. Just think about Guernica, where an entire village was destroyed. So this county was fought for very atrociously, and there were villages that have ceased to exist. A priest in one of these small villages thought about how to overcome these difficulties and these differences and to reconnect the people with each other. And he thought about how to go about doing this. And the answer was common projects, education, and so on. So this was in the beginning of the 1940s. And it took a long time because it wasn't easy to implement this in the small city of Mondragon. Now it has 10,000 inhabitants. Back then, probably fewer, but it was still difficult to make this happen. So only in the 1950s, 10 years after the launch of the project, a cooperative was founded by 5 engineers. What they wanted to do was to found a cooperative for products such as blenders, for example. So it was an industry company, manufacturing company, and they were producing these blenders in Mondragon. And they not only wanted to let the people work together, but also co-decide. So everybody who started working there at Mondragon became a co-owner, so to speak. But they also wanted to make sure that people had access to education. So they founded schools for the children of the workers, but also for other people who lived in Mondragon. All of this has developed during the past 70 years. And now Mondragon has become the 7th largest company in Spain. It's an umbrella organization of 100 cooperatives, but not just this, it also has universities, organization centers. Was there 2 years ago in the summer. It was really interesting to see because you go through the rambling hills of the Basque Country, and at some point the GPS tells you that you're here, that you're there, you're at your destination. I was wondering because I was standing in front of a very small building, just a small office on a hill, on top of a hill, and it said Mondragon office. So I introduced myself with the security guard. I only speak a few words of Spanish. Unfortunately, somebody from the PR department came along and explained everything to me. It was very interesting to hear. Due to its size and democratic structures, Mondragon is a role model for many cooperatives, especially in the US. And this is why more than 2,000 people a year go to this small village and take a look at how this actually works. And they have advertising material in a dozen languages. So I was watching a 15-minute video in German about the structure of Mondragon. As I said, it's a role model for many cooperatives.
Gut, dann nicht. Irgendwas habe ich gehört.
I was just hearing something. So in the course of my research, I talked to Dario Azzedini, a cooperative researcher, who considers this as a very positive thing, but he also has some criticism when it comes to Mondragon, which I also found interesting. As I said before, they have 80,000 employees or workers there, and basically they follow a democratic structure, but there is, of course, also a hierarchy. And Dario Azzedini, this very renowned New York-based cooperative researcher, said that the problem with Mondragon is that they have a certain entrepreneurial mentality, if you will. So each employee, each coworker is turned into an entrepreneur, and of course they want the best for the company and for this conglomerate. And if that means that certain cooperatives go bankrupt, that's just the way it is, and that's something that they also said was true when I asked him about it. So you could criticize this, but the positive thing is that when they have to close down a cooperative, the people are not laid off. They're sent to other cooperatives. The same happens when people reach a certain age, then they are paid a pension until they are eligible for the state-funded pension. I'm going to go to the next cooperative now. Mondragon was an example of what can happen from a common positive vision in a dire situation, but also intended from the beginning on as a cooperative. I'm going to go for the opposite example now. The first cooperative I visited was in Thessaloniki in Greece. We all know the situation in Greece. It's not very comfortable right now. The average salaries are very low. Unemployment is skyrocketing, especially with youth. It's scary, to be honest. And in Thessaloniki in 2010, there was a very interesting project being done, Viume, and they produced soap. So in Vienna, you can buy this soap. You can buy it in Germany and France, and it developed out of an industry, a manufacturing company that produced glue for tiles originally, and then of course of the Greek debt crisis around 2010, this company was just closed down. So the workers at one day a Monday, they went to work and the doors were closed and no one knew what was happening. Why can't we enter our place of work anymore? The business was in trouble a long time before. They had to work for 6 months without receiving their salaries before.
May I ask everyone who's not speaking? Yes, thank you. To mute. Thank you.
Ja, zurück zu diesem Biome. Also die Leute standen da
Now
einfach.
back to Biome. So the people were standing in front of the closed gates of the building that were, it was about 60 people who were affected. They didn't know what to do. And after several months of deliberation and planning, especially together with leftist groups in Thessaloniki, they said, well, they owe us money. All in all, over €1 million. We're just going to reopen the gates ourselves. We're going to occupy this enterprise and do something useful with it. And that's what they did. They just entered the manufacturing company and started producing soap again because they said it's our company anyway. They owe us $1 million, €1 million, if not more. And all across Thessaloniki, there was solidarity for these people. So the people came and supported them. They brought them food, they brought them money, they bought the soap that they produced with these machines that were originally meant for tile glue. And the people from Biome said that they wouldn't rest at that. They wanted to give back some of this solidarity. And that's why they started to initiate a cooperative network all across Greece. Many agricultural companies went bankrupt during the crisis, and they also were occupied by the people who used to work there. And by now, there are more than 1,000 cooperatives in Greece that have developed from that. And they founded a sort of network where they would directly market their products at the farmers market. So it was a network of more than several thousand people. And then, of course, news travels through word of mouth. They just tell each other, well, there's a farmers market and there's another one. And so they could sell all these products themselves. And the people at Biome do more than that. It's very interesting. The offices at this company is incredibly large. They would only use 25%, so they refurbished everything and they opened a clinic for poor people, and they also have doctors come there twice a week and offer sort of medical provision, basic medical services for the people living there. They have also started a bakery where people can buy cheap food or even get it for free. So the people at Biome really want to give something back and have a positive impact on their surroundings. If you compare Mondragon with Biome, Mondragon is this organically grown, incredibly large company, cooperative, and Biome has only just begun, and it's very different because the first one was meant as a cooperative from the beginning on, and the second one started as an occupation. And it works for both. Mondragon has 80,000 people involved, and Biome only has 24. So that does make for a difference in the way that they're both organized. With Mondragon, you can see the internal elections where an advisory body is put together and then they're sent to the umbrella organization. And Biome, they just meet every morning at 6 a.m. and just talk about for an hour what's happening, who's in charge of what. and what you're going to do at work during the next couple of days. So I'm not going to talk about the third cooperative because I don't have a lot of time left. I just want to ask you, is there anything you would like to ask me, or is there anything else I can tell you? A little bit of time is left. So you have 10 minutes. So maybe I will talk about the third company anyway. Scoopty in France. How can I put this? It's something in between. It's situated near Marseille in Cheminot. It's a small village. It's basically an industrial environment. You have Burger King's, McDonald's, restaurants, and a couple of thousand people living there. Originally, Skopje is a tea manufacturer belonged to Unilever, and they told the employees from suddenly at one day, we're going to close this. We're going to move to Poland. Either you come with us, earning 500 euros a month, or you can just stop. So people thought about what to do. They turned to the Workers' Council, and they told them, if you want to occupy the enterprise, we will help you. And they said, yes, we'd love that, but what about afterwards? How can we put them under pressure? How can we put pressure on them to change something? And Skopje's plan was relatively simple. They said that we have this structure. We don't want this structure anymore where everything is managed from top down. We hate the work climate that we have here. We want to self-govern. We want to be at the same level, all of us. That's easy to say, but they actually did something. They occupied the enterprise, and Unilever just said, we don't care, we're just going to wait it out. But Skopje didn't stop. They occupied it for 3 years overall, 1,969 days to be exact. They were supported by all of France. The neighboring village had a communist mayor back then, and he made sure that they had financial backing and food and clothes and everything that they needed. All over France, politics had to deal with this issue. Right-wing politics said, close them down. And the other side said, no, we have to support them no matter the cost. And after 3 years, Unilever just backed down. They told them that they could keep the production site, including all the machinery, and they also said that they would give them a certain financial basis as well as education trainings to make sure that they could self-operate this manufacturing company. The interesting thing is that it works really well. It's not a small initiative such as Viome. It's not a large cooperative such as Mondragon. It's somewhere in the middle. Their teas can be bought all across France, and they're trying to grow. And just like Viome, they're trying to give something back to the people who supported them. And with Skopje, it has an ecological component. The environment was known for a specific type of tea which can't be produced anymore because it's just not worth anymore. It's lime blossom. And they were talking to the farmers who lived there. And now they're trying to do that in a fair trade way, organically, and also revitalize an industry that was all but dead. So Skopje knew from the beginning on that they wanted to self-govern, but it's not a small initiative such as Viome with only 20 people. It's also not a big company like Mondragon. So that's everything from my side. Thank you very much, Christian. That was a very interesting, broad overview of the different types of cooperatives that we have in Europe. There's a question in the chat. Are there any any examples for Austria that you can tell us? Yes, of course. When it comes to cooperatives, Austria is a very institutionalized country. I myself live in a building managed by a cooperative. I cannot co-decide anything. I also work at a cooperative where I cannot decide anything. But of course, in Austria, there are a lot of small cooperatives and initiatives. At the border of Vienna, in a village bordering Vienna, there's Obertura, which is a solidary agricultural company, maybe 10 people, self-governed, self-organized, who produce anything that you need, like eggs, grains, and so on, vegetables. It's all organic. They don't fertilize chemically, and they are self-organized. So they make sure that the earnings are equally distributed among them. And also they want to grow to a certain degree at least. And from this project, Obertura, a foundation has developed, the so-called Numus Foundation. And what they're trying to do is to save land from the market economy. So people who say that they have a plot, they have a house, but I don't want to sell it at terrifying prices. I want to make sure that this land is used afterwards in a useful way, in a meaningful way, and they give it to the foundation, and that makes sure that that can't happen, and everything is organized and managed through democratic structures. In Ottakring in Vienna, there was a printing company, but unfortunately they went bankrupt, so it's maybe not the best example. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the participants?
Okay, here from Dimitri. What about competition with traditional business who exploit the workers and can decrease prices to kill cooperatives as competitors? Also quasi, was ist mit dem Verhältnis Konkurrenz zu traditionellen?
So what about the relationship between competition and traditional businesses? If you lower the prices through exploitation, we're going to have another guest speak about this issue afterwards. But the question is, how can you describe this relationship? And is it not true that the cooperatives suffer from this relationship because they are trying to offer fair working conditions and they still have to deal with this type of competition? That is, in fact, a problem. That is true. All the cooperatives, about a dozen that I visited, I asked this question: what about the competition? And all of them answered me honestly, we know that we live in a capitalist society and we just have to deal with it. The printing company in Ottakring had this exact problem. They just could not compete with the prices on the market and they went bankrupt. A negative example would also be Oasis in Bolzano in South Tyrol. It's a social cooperative that is trying to help addicts, especially alcoholics, and reintegrate them into the labor market. And they work together with a gardening company. And this project is working very well, but now all across South Tyrol, such cooperatives are developing and they compete with each other. But Oasis is has a very good reputation, and that's what helps them. And that's also something that the people told me that I talked with. We have a reputation, and people believe in us, and that's why they support us. But that is something, of course, that every cooperative suffers from. VMA pays its members 400 euros per month, and that's it. You can't live on that. And that is the same for all cooperatives. The competition can cause cooperatives to sink. You could work around that problem by taking over entire production chains, from mining, for example, to refining, to producing, manufacturing, and that would immunize them against certain market economy related volatilities. Thank you very much. I think this is a very good transition to the lecture by Karl Staudinger, and he's going to talk about the legal foundations, the benefits and the drawbacks of cooperatives, and maybe also talk about the situation in Austria. The floor is yours.
Christian, vielen Dank. Und ja.
And we will be taking down the rest of your questions and then wrap them up at the end of the day, at the end of this meeting.
Yeah. Hello. Also, my first
Yeah.
words in English, and then as Christian, I will continue in German. It's exciting to be in a conference that has international guests, and congratulations to the organizers to bring people together to talk, to think about cooperatives. Okay, das war's auch schon. Jetzt spreche ich Deutsch weiter.
So much for my German introduction. English introduction, I will continue in German. It was quite interesting what we heard from Christian Kaserer. He first mentioned Mondragon as an example, and one important event for the formation of our Association of Cooperatives. We were founded in December 2016. We were recognized then by the Ministry of the Economy as an audit association. And one major event at the time was in May 2015, and there we had a symposium on solidarity management. And a high-level functionary of Mondragon attended the symposium and he held a workshop. I don't remember his name. His name was Michele. I can't remember his family name. But of course, many people are called Michele. And then we had Connie Gellenberg there. And from Croatia, we had a young lady who works in a cooperation association there. Okay. I think that's a very good opportunity to speak about the founding document of our organization. And before I go into the details, I think that might be of relevance to you. At the Congress back in time, we formulated a manifesto for a solidarity management movement. The text was developed during the symposium. It was an idea that actually cropped up during the meeting, and we felt we needed such a document. And the last act in that symposium was that in the final plenary, we edited the text and we then adopted it by a show of hands. Perhaps some introductory words to start with. There's a crisis of trust in our present system. We were founded after the financial crisis, in the wake of the financial crisis. And the cooperative was considered by us as the legal form of solidarity management. That's what we called it in the document. We referred to that, and that was our assessment back in time, that there's a big yearning of more and more people, a growing number of people who want to contribute their passion, their knowledge, their abilities, their talents to make the world a better one. Well, it sounds quite trivial, but I do think that that was a major concern of many people at the time. And many say, in order to do that, we need to transfer and transform our economy. And let's form and set up companies that are different, that can show us how economy works. Well, that is not my task here today, but that was a background idea related to the history of our association. I will now move on and talk about I'll try and share my screen and inform you about the legal basics of cooperatives. Just a second. And I will start with two provisos that are quite characteristic of the legal form of a cooperative. And these are quite substantive elements: the legal requirements and the obligations on cooperatives. If you want to set up a cooperative in Austria, you need to become a member of an association. And that was the reason why we set up our own association, as we said that there are some people who want to act along cooperative lines in Austria, and they are not covered and not attracted by the assisting associations. And this is why we wanted to reach out to them. And there's a mandatory requirement to become part of such an association. For the matter of completeness, for the sake of completeness, I have to add that you can go to court and file for being exempted from this obligation, but only if you have been declined by an existing association. So if you wanted to join and they said, no, we don't want you, we don't accept you, then you can go to court and apply for a waiver. And it's called the Revisionsverband, or literally translated as an audit association or review association. And that means that every other year the cooperative must subject itself to a review by the association. Review or audit is an audit for economy and also an audit whether the cooperative acts within the line of its statutes and its targets and in compliance with those. I now move on to the major provisions, the core provisions that are characteristic of a cooperative. The core of each cooperative is a mission. A cooperative is a legal form that obliges it to promote gainful activity and the economy of its members. And when I say economy, it's consumer cooperatives that are meant actually for people to obtain their needs more cost efficiently than would be possible otherwise, namely how they run their households. And that means that a cooperative is targeted and aims at supporting its members in their professional activities. Ever since 2006 or 2008, I'm not quite sure when, you can also set up a cooperative that promotes the social activities of its members. So these are the admissible criteria relating to its mission. In contrast to a limited company, with a limited company, the main purpose is, or a stock corporation, companies limited by shares, that is one thing, and then we have the partnerships on the other hand, but cooperatives are neither one nor the other. So with a corporation, a company limited by shares, it is the purpose of those who contribute money to the company. They want it to grow and to become more. Well, of course, there are many limited companies, so many limited companies, different forms. There's even benevolent limited companies, but in general, from its basic structure, that would be one major difference, namely that the cooperative promotes its members in what they do, in their activities, and corporations promote the members only to the extent indirectly that capital is to provide and generate a return, a yield. I can skip that quite briefly. It's a mandatory element of the articles that you specify the object of your cooperative. I said there's this mission which is set out and spelled out in law, and the articles of this corporation is a founding document. It's a sort of deed, a contract which the members enter into, and it would be synonymous for a cooperative agreement or articles or statute. It's all the same. So you have to specify the purpose, the object, and then you have to designate what exactly the cooperative will be doing to reach its objectives. What about membership in a cooperative? How is that organized? Who can become a member of a cooperative? How many members do we need as a minimum? The minimum number is 2 members for a cooperative. In general terms, membership in a cooperative is reserved to persons who would benefit from the activities, and could benefit from the activities and from the mission of the cooperative. That would be the main benefit of membership. And is the purpose of a cooperative to primarily carry out its activities and its tasks through its members, if possible. So let's assume you would be setting up a cooperative of people. It has been mentioned, who would repair their bicycles together or create cost-efficient possibilities for buying and repairing bicycles. Then the cooperative normally could offer and carry out those repairs only for its members. Normally. I said normally, but if you explicitly state that in the articles or statutes, then the cooperative can also do business with non-members. And in fact, it is true that this is the case with the major cooperatives in Austria. And in reality, this is something that our member cooperatives also have business relations with third parties and outside people. Another thing, people become members in cooperatives who are not affected by its missions, who don't qualify, are not eligible for being promoted. But they say, let's join, let's become a member, we want to support the cooperative, we'll subscribe for a share, and in this way we support the cooperative. And this is nothing I've put down on the slides, but that is something, how should I put it? That's a main difference between an association and a cooperative, namely that a cooperative may distribute profits, and if you have
dann dürfen denen auch Gewinne, wenn die Genossenschaft
they are entitled to taking out some of the profits. And that is not possible in an association, because an association is not for profit, it's non-profit oriented, and although it's not forbidden, that is often a misunderstanding, it's not forbidden for an association to engage in entrepreneurial activities and to manage and operate companies, but an association is not allowed to distribute profits to its members. Another important criterion is if an association is dissolved, the remaining assets will not be disseminated among the members, but must be channeled to any non-profit purpose. Perhaps I have time to answer any questions on that later on after my presentation. So, every member must subscribe for at least 1 share in the cooperative. And the share is an instrument, a tool of a cooperative to generate equity or to actually have equity when it is founded. In the articles, we will have a provision on how high this equity, this capital will be, and you have to give a careful thought as to how high that should be. Sometimes it would make sense to have a higher capital endowment and sometimes less. But there is no lower threshold, simply that zero is not possible. The law does not prescribe for any minimum capital endowment for a cooperative. What is interesting in a cooperative, if you compare it with a limited company, is that it's flexible regarding the admission of members. This is something I've addressed and explained when I talked about membership, and that is very important to be aware of that. Accepting a new member into the cooperative is a decision or resolution adopted by management, and it's very simple to do, can be done easily and quickly. For a limited company, a new shareholder requires the drafting of a notarial deed, and then that requires filing with the company's register.
Wo die Flexibilität der Genossenschaft als Rechtsform hervorsticht,
shares can be actually terminated. You can terminate your membership in a cooperative, and then you can terminate your share, and then this is returned to you, it's paid out to you. But you can subscribe for several shares and then terminate only some of the shares. So if you have a cooperative, it could be set up and founded, and members pay and subscribe to the shares for the startup phase. And once the company is fledgling and making profits, they can terminate the shares, and this gives you a funding instrument that is actually that works quite well without complication. However, there is one limitation, one proviso, and we, as a not-for-profit association, like that. Some don't. The share is returned at the value it has, the current value. So what you paid in, you will get out at most and not more. Because if the cooperative is facing difficulties and equity and the capital has been used up by losses, then you will be only getting back the non-used part of the share. It sounds complicated. Maybe it's easier to explain to say if you have the capital and it's been reduced by 50% by losses, then if you terminate, you will be getting only 50% of the worth of your share when you leave. That is certainly an interesting point. Perhaps to put it graphically, your share is absolutely unsuited to be used for speculation. You can have reserves, millions of reserves, but if you leave the cooperative, which you founded, where you were a co-founder, and if you leave it, you want to get your share back, you will be getting back the nominal value of what you paid in. So the amount you paid in, you'll be getting out. I have not mentioned that for the disbursement of the share, there is a blocking period of 1 year, but maybe that is too specific for today's presentation. Perhaps one other point that something we need to understand if we want to understand how cooperatives work. All cooperatives in Austria, to my knowledge, and that's about 1600, all of those Austrian cooperatives are cooperatives with limited liability. And what are the liability provisions? In the case of bankruptcy, the members are liable up to the amount of their share, so that will be lost in case of bankruptcy. And if necessary to satisfy the creditors, they have to contribute another share in the amount of the value of their share, meaning a supplementary obligation to pay up. But that is quite controversial and disputed, and maybe the law will be changed even this year. Okay. The bodies of a cooperative, Christian Kaserer mentioned the word self-governance, self-administration, self-management. I'm a lawyer, and as a lawyer, I normally deal with the formal aspects of self-government and self-administration. And throughout my professional life, I've been dealing with those very issues. But of course, you could have the feeling that is a bureaucratic requirement. If you look at the organizational structure of a cooperative, the point is that all decisions can be verified and will be documented. And that is not always easy and not always a matter of fact. Often I find it's uplifting when I attend meetings to set up a cooperative, a new cooperative, and then all the words are said, a motion is submitted, an application is filed, and then they find out how things work. And there's many things you have to learn if you set up a cooperative, if you want to run a company or manage a business jointly. It's a simple structure, similar in all legal forms. You have a management board, you have a meeting of shareholders, and the meeting of shareholders is that very place where self-government happens. You have the management board being elected, they are accountable to the members, the general members, meeting of shareholders, and this is where they decide on the appropriation of profits. I now move on to one important point. This is where the audit report, the review report, is being dealt with. I think I did say a couple of words about this review or audit when I familiarized myself with the topic of cooperatives. I felt that this review or audit requirement was a burden. And yes, it's a lot of red tape and it costs a lot of money, but still. But still, there's a positive aspect to all that, namely that this audit element or review element actually keeps the cooperative going with this requirement of having this audit every 2 years, at regular intervals, and an outsider's view, an outsider's feedback of how things are going. This might help positively running the cooperative. And then some non-legal points on how cooperatives are set up and organized. What is important, what is essential, is that the members get along with one another. It sounds so trivial, but still, that is not always easy to achieve. And I myself, I admit it, I am a member of one such organization, and it's always a big challenge to get along with others. There are often phases where people actually are at loggerheads. Yes, then we have the principle of one person, one vote. And that is the third element of flexibility in cooperatives. You can design it in different ways. Normally, you have one member, one vote, but alternatively, if you don't want it, you could have voting rights depending on shares or capital contributions. Or you can have a system of limited shares, or let's say 2 shares, 1 vote, or various different forms that can be applied here. A voting model that is a sub-form of the one person or one member, one vote is the franchise system, which we use in 1/3 of our cooperatives. I won't go into detail as time is running fast. If you want to set up and form a cooperative, what do you need to do? It just needs to be registered in the companies registered, and for that you need to have an assurance from an audit or review company that they will be accepting you in their association. They will first be reviewing the articles of the corporation, whether they are in compliance with the law, and then they will be looking at the business plan to be submitted by the cooperative before they accept you as a member. And if there is a justified reason for that cooperative to be run. I think I've spent quite some time, and a little bit is left of my time for questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Stauding. A couple of questions have come in the chat. The first question, Tanya from Serbia.
Would it be a viable solution for freelancers seeking to become workers rather than entrepreneurs? Meine Antwort quasi im Chat.
So the answer I gave in the chat was that we will be getting a presentation by Coop Cycle and Lekton where exactly those points will be addressed. But perhaps you would like to pick that up. Well, we're very proud of Lekton. They will be giving a presentation today. I'm sure that Bernd Habel and his team will provide an excellent answer to the question has been asked. And then a question. What about interest payments on shares? A cooperative? Or let's put it in different ways. It's for the general meeting of shareholders or members to decide how they're going to distribute the profit. The only thing is there needs to be equal treatment of all members, and profit that is to be distributed must be distributed on a pro rata basis on shares held. But maybe I didn't get the question. Mr. Franz Gieder asked this question. A follow-up? My question was, what I remember is that if you have a cooperative, there is no distribution like with companies limited by shares, but there's an interest distributed on shares. So there's not a payout? No. A cooperative is allowed to pay out its profits. Maybe this is just a discrepancy in the terminology between the different cooperatives, Raiffeisen and others, and they might use the word interest-bearing, although it refers to profits. So if you say that there is a profit made by the cooperative and it distributes it, an amount X, to the members, the full amount or a part of the amount, then the distribution model classically would be you divide it up by the number of shares, and depending how many shares there are, this results in the amount of disbursement. And then a follow-up question. In Austria, how do you see the large cooperatives? And do they comply with the relevant regulation, Raiffeisen and Volksbank? Well, before I attended this meeting, I would not say anything negative about the competitors, our rivals. Well, I think it's safe to say that you associate a big conglomeration with Raiffeisen. And then there's rural cooperatives in Austria that are under pressure because they are finding it difficult to comply with the requirement of the corporation. There's many books on that. There's lots of literature on that. Holzinger wrote a paper or a book on that. I don't really deal with those issues. My concern is to see that our member cooperatives get the best possible service and that we actually assist them in formation. Two further questions. One from the chat. We heard about cooperatives where there's no right of co-determination, let's say in housing. Yes, there are some elements that are quite mind-boggling. Actually, a colleague from my chess club showed me the articles of his own cooperative, and he would have loved to take part and have a say in the decisions. But then again, systems are different, cooperatives are different, situations are different. In some cases, we have the meeting of members that is actually a meeting of delegates, and those delegates are appointed at a moment in time when you should be knowing that this information is to be found there and located there and there, to know that you should be appointing a delegate who will represent your interests in the meeting. Yes, this may happen. So it's quite confusing. But then we have housing cooperatives that work well and function perfectly, as Christian told us. And then I can tell you that my own chairman is a member of a housing cooperative, and there things work quite well. But things are handled very differently, and it always depends on the persons involved. Thank you very much for that. And then a very last question. Hello. I would have a follow-up question. Where you said it's a matter of interpretation how you handle these things in the articles. But my question is, what is it that makes cooperatives democratic or more democratic? It's not the legal framework, is it? Correct. I fully share your view. A cooperative is a lot more flexible in many different issues, but a good democratic company is something you can set up also as a limited liability company. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I think it would not make sense to say that only cooperatives can be organized along democratic lines. The legal requirements are good for a cooperative, but the members, the shareholders of a limited company can interact in a manner that you could call based on solidarity. Thank you very much for this clarification. And then my last question. If you want to do international business, or is there a European cooperative? Well, we have a strange solution. We have a Societas Cooperativa Europea, SCE, and we are quite proud that the first SCE is registered in Austria. It was set up in Austria, our power co-op, and they deal in electricity or power. However, that is not a legal form that is used all across Europe, but our power is registered with the Vienna Commercial Court. It had its registered seat in Austria, and in fact there's 27 forms of SCEs. There's a joint legal framework. It's not as flexible as the Austrian law would allow, with a minimum capital contribution required, unlike in Austria, and more limitations when it comes to voting rights. But the only requirement is that the members must come from at least 2 members of the European Union. Well, that's similar to an SEE, an European Stock Corporation. So thank you very much. If there are any questions, we can deal with them later on, perhaps. And I'd like to pass the floor and give the floor to Arthur Hay. He's been around for quite some time. I don't speak French, and he represents Coop Cycle. Coop Cycle is a cooperative that deals with food delivery, but not only. It's a messenger service, a courier service. All that started in France, and I think Arthur can give us a very good overview. You have the floor.
Arthur, thank you for having you here. You need to unmute yourself, please.
I feel like a old person when I do this. So thank you for the invite. Thank you for the OGB, for all the organization. Really glad to be here. I'll be speaking in English, even if it's not really my mother tongue, but I have no German to save me now. So it
Gar
will be in
kein
English.
Deutsch spreche, deswegen muss ich auf Englisch ausweichen.
I'm a bike deliverer.
Also ich bin ein Fahrradbote.
I've been working for companies like Uber, Deliveroo, Foodora, those companies that make you have a freelancer status to work for them. So I make a little bit of historical overview for us to understand well why Coop Cycle has been created. So me, I'm a member of Coop Cycle since 2017, and I'm a member of a union defending the labor right, especially the freelancer right in delivery situations in the union CGT since 2016. So I started by the union work and then cooperative work, and now I'm doing both because I think it's two sides of the same coin going in the same direction. So what happened is in 2017 year we managed, and when I say we, it's the unions I've been in and some other collectives, we managed to make some strikes to make our voice heard by the media, by the people, by the customers. And so many people understood who were those people riding bikes in the streets. And because many people were wondering how we appear so fast in the streets, because like 2 years before, they didn't see any people with big backpacks riding in the city. So that's kind of our first victory as a union. It's to acknowledge the people, the precarity we are in. And so we managed to attract the attention of some people in Paris, France, and who decided as volunteers to create an alternative of the urbanization. They decided to give another options to riders like me, and to manage ourselves and to work for ourselves directly. And this is how they created the idea of Coop Cycle. So basically, those people, I know most of them, they don't do bike at all. They don't do delivery. So, but they had many different skills, and they decided to put it to create Coop Cycle. So to say Coop Cycle right now, it's a federation of cooperative or collectives who are aiming to be cooperative. So the federations has values. So we have basically democratic governance. I make the big points, then I go into the details later. So there are democratic governance, like one crop, one vote, and the democratic goals also in the local co-ops. Other value, it's the created value of the co-ops. They go directly to the workers, and they should not go anywhere else. Like one of our basic sentences, it's money should not make money. So this is how it happens. All the benefits go to the workers. And the last part, and I think it's like the core idea of the Coop Cycle thing, is the collective property of the means of productions that goes to the workers. And I'm gonna start after with an example. The biggest is the software we all use in common. And also we have the last value. Sometimes we forget to talk about it because it's so natural for us. We do everything in bike. And so it's a federation naturally of bike delivery now. Like we do last mile delivery and we do food delivery, but I'll speak about it in more details in the last part of my speech. So just to say now, what is the federation, how big are we? So we have now, only for the federation, we have 2 employees, only taking care of the federation topics. We are based in 7 different countries. So it's France, Spain, England, Germany, Canada, Poland, and Sweden. There is actually 65 co-ops or collectives, as I said, which are aiming to be a co-op. Last year, 2020, even with the COVID situation, we made in the federation more than 100,000 deliveries. So we're pretty glad about this and making 3.5 million turnover in the federation. And this year, the last year has been absolutely incredible for the federation because so many collectives, so many group of people joined the federation and are still joining the federation. So in the next few years, we're gonna be big. That put some questions, some difficulties in how we keep the democratic system in it. So I'll talk about it, and actually that's gonna be my first part about the speech. So what is the democratic system in governments in the federation? So as I say, it's one co-op, one vote, whatever the size of the co-op. So democracy in the company, in the federation, for us, it's not only voting. It's to be to have all the knowledge of the federation on what's going on in the federation, on when you have all this knowledge, then you can speak, then you can debate, then you can make decisions. This is how we are thinking this democracy thing. It's not only you put questions in a numerical tool and then people answers and then the decision is made. We are always debating, and like we have a Slack all together when we are all discussing on many subjects. But we decided to divide it the subjects in 3 big parts. So we have coordination, development, and budget. On the last part, the budget, how is it made? Every co-op that has already an economical activity has to give a contribution to the federation. The contribution is 2% of the added value of each co-op. And so every 6 months we give it to the federation. And it's with this money we can manage to employ 1 developer who can manage the software, and also 1 coordinator who can help the new people coming in the federation to start good with us. And so we have also the development. So development is all about the software, the tool, because all the co-ops locally, we use the Coop Cycle tool. I'll develop it a little bit later, but it's a specific logistical tool that helps us to be efficient, as efficient as a delivery Uber food. And so there is many things you can develop in those logistical tools. And so we created a group with other co-ops so we can decide what priority we give to the development of this tool. And so the coordination, so there is a group of people on the coordination group. So basically most of the job is to help the new collective to work with the federation. In each of these groups, so you'll find volunteers of local co-ops. So how is it working? So as I said, every co-op has to contribute financially, but we also have to contribute with work, let's say. So we engage ourselves as a co-op to give 1 or 2 people to work on one of these groups, to make our workforce on these subjects really efficient, and we can go forward, because only 2 employees for all the co-ops and collectives won't be enough to manage everything. So this is how we manage the things. And we also are creating like control bodies, like to see if the democracy is respected in the federation and also in the local co-ops. So we have to build like many chairs, many groups of people controlling what's happening here and there, because we're already kind of big, but we are also anticipating when we're gonna get bigger. And because I cannot even imagine how like a co-op like Mondragons can work, it must be really amazing to know every details of it. So second part is the collective property of the means of production. And for us, mostly it is the software we put on common. So the basic idea at the beginning to create the alternative from the volunteers in Paris was to create the software and then let it to the workers. And so we can manage to compete against the big corporation like Uber and Deliveroo. And so we had to think of how we protect the software and also make it like something like free, transparent, not opaque. So some people in Coop Cycle created are using a license which is copyleft. So it's something you can contribute to the software, to the creation of the software and the improvement of the software. But if you want to use it to make a company, to work as a logistical tool, you need to respect some things, like you have to respect the definition of a social solidarity economy as the European Union is defining it. So it's like sharing the benefits, democratic gestion, social utility, and independent from public sources. So basically it's this. And the other point is you have to be a cooperative with employees, no freelancers. Because as the dear Dr. Staudinger say, he's a lawyer, you can find many ways to go around the democratic subject of a cooperative. And this is why you need to put some boundaries. The local co-ops cannot pass. And this is why we're saying cooperative with employee and no freelancers on it. What else? And the software, basically, it helps us a lot on logistical, like the clients, the customers, they can go in our websites, they can order deliveries, food deliveries or anything that can deliver. The payment is online. It's really easy, really simple to use. And this is really a big help for any co-op that are creating themselves, because those kind of tools are really, really, really expensive in the market. And if you want to create your own, it's impossible to pay it, except if you're mostly a capitalistic company with a lot of money already, but impossible for workers from the gig economy. And so what we put in common is also the insurances. So we are going to negotiate with a big insurances company to have like some kind of bargains. We are managing also to find clients, customers, as big companies like Carrefour in France. This especially it's negotiated with sorry, it's a colleague. So we find customers nationally, because sometimes big companies, they only work if you can give them a national solution or a European solution. And as we are now a federation, an international federation, at least with 7 countries, and really, really present in France, we can manage to find those kind of customers. What we also do is we manage to put on common some expenses, like buying bikes, trailers for the bikes, and all those things, all in order not to be like one isolated co-op buying bike at the most expensive price, but we also do this. So I can answer the questions, specific questions about it later. So I go to the third part. So created values to the workers. So as I said, money should not make money. All the benefits of the companies are distributed to the workers. So you need to ride a bike to earn the money, basically. So this is at least how we think it in our local co-op. So how do we manage to make the co-op respect these kind of things? When they enter the federation, they need to sign a collective agreement, kind of a collective agreement, where there is many things you engage yourself to respect. So this created values to the workers, the democratic way to manage the company, and a few other things like do not distribute all the documents we share all together, and the things, because in the federation we are a lot. How can I say? We are all together in it. I mean, we are all talking all together, as I said, and we're sharing many of information, like private information on our companies, to help the people who come in to start. So there is it's really a trusty engagement we have all together. And so in this collective agreement, it put all those engagement. So yeah, I'll come back then on what, how can we consider ourselves as an alternative? We are pretty much aware of we are going to have many difficulties to bring down the Uberization now, just our co-ops. But what we do now, it's we are putting all the lies of the Uberization in a bin. Like companies like Foodora, Deliveroo, Uber, they say, if we make us respect our employer responsibility, pay the contributions, pay you a proper wages, we will go down, so we will leave your country. What Coop Cycle shows is that it is really possible to make a delivery company with a bike that makes money and respect their workers. It's really simple. So basically, we're cutting the crap out of these companies. And then we are showing this to the lawmakers, because the lawmakers, and especially in France, they're trying to help the companies like Uber and Deliveroo not to have legal problems, because you can go to a court and ask for employee status, and then the delivery company and all those gig economy companies are going to pay you a lot of money, and they're pretty afraid about this. So they ask help for the government to help them not to have those kind of problems. And using the argument of, like we are employing thousands of people, don't make us save the country. So we show them that you can respect your employees and your workers and have a profitable company. How do we compete? So that was one question before. First, we save a lot of money not feeding a greedy capitalist man on the top of a company who's not even delivering anything. So basically, like, we are at the stage of capitalism exploitation that makes us save a lot of money in regard of other competitors, really. So basically, we are never going to be rich riding for our co-ops, but we managed to have good wages, not so much, but good enough, and we're pretty happy about it. And at every end of the year as a co-op, we can give ourselves what we can. Oh man, I didn't take for the translation in English for this one. So let's say the worker tribute. So at the end of the year, some part of the benefits you can give to the workers. And so with this, we also managed to have a good wages, good incomes. So another way to compete with this company, it's quality, and it's linked basically to the cleverness of how we conduct our companies. We are bike deliverers, we know now a lot of about logistics, and we have a lot of advices from other co-ops that are doing logistics. We have the cleverness now to compete logistically talking with those companies. Let's say like gig economy companies, they will hire freelancers and they pay them only at the task. So it means like it doesn't cost more money from them to put 2 people doing 2 deliveries than putting 1 people doing 2 deliveries, because they will only pay the task. So, I mean, it's they don't think anymore because it's too easy for them to run a business. But we have to think, and we managed to overtake them by the left to in the logistical and find a way to compete, even talking about the prices. Because us, we never go only with 1 delivery and come back without anything in our bags. We really, there is an optimization of every delivery. So we managed to compete also at this stage. As Robert said, so basically at the beginning of Coop Cycle, the idea was to compete against the food delivery companies. But finally, like, we are competing also on companies in the globally last mile delivery. So we're delivering many things like flowers, like parts of people for hospitals and such, and documents and big things we don't even know what's in. And so, but even in this area, there are many companies of the gig economy that are competing with us. It's not only in the food delivery that Uber made some babies, so we need to compete with them. And in the last mile delivery, it's safer than in the food delivery business, because we are pretty much the first to be really organized doing this on bikes. And many of big cities, like I'm talking townships, are really interested in increasing the bike delivery system. And so we are kind of the first, and we are not a capitalistical companies, and we really aiming to be the only kind of exploitation of workers in the business. So, and sometimes, like in Bordeaux, I can say like our co-op is also giving advices to another co-op that is created by 2 other colleagues that we know about, but it was impossible to bring them inside our co-op, but they're creating themselves. And we are competing in cleverness too. So we're not really competing on each other, and I think we're creating something that can compete with the biggest company. So as I said, I'm a union member, and I'm keeping this side of the coin. And I managed to make understand to my union, the CTT, that creating co-ops is also a way to compete and to improve the worker conditions, and also in the gig economy where we were acting at first, because showing, as I said, the alternative is interesting to make the fight more effective, I think. And yeah, basically that's it. And those kind of platform co-op, as some people can call us, are being created in many areas, domestic, like housekeeping, many things, and many of them are created after some workers are being really too much exploited on an area, and they're thinking about how to extract themselves from this exploitation. And it's something that grows, really. It's growing. Yeah. So I let the people to the questions.
Thank you, Arthur. I really like the whole idea and approach. I'm always like, ooh. There was one question from Dimitri. If you have developed the software by yourself with your volunteers, or from the scratch, or if you have developed the software from the scratch, or did you use some open source platform? Like, first question.
And the developer of it. But I know that the developer, his name Alexander Segura, and he's been using GitHub, how can I say in English, really too much technical. You know, you have a kind of sentences, development sentences in GitHub available. So he picked what he can, put it in the software, and then write it better to be really well included in the software. I think this is how it's working. Some people sometimes helps him, not like in the design of the software, because he's maybe less good in this subject than in other subjects. You know, sometimes people are coming to volunteer to help him. But let's give to Caesar what's his. Alexander made most of the development, actually.
So I guess the question that comes with it from Dimitri is if there's existing platforms for couriers cooperatives, should be answered with that if you want to get access to your software, you have to become a member of your federation and be yourself a cooperative that has certain values and sticks to these values.
Exactly.
So, yes.
It's it. I mean, so we're not bad people. So we give you 2 years to be a co-op and employ the people working on the co-op. Because as a member of a co-op, I know it's difficult at the beginning to find the customers and to have enough money to employ the people, because it's the same as in Austria. If I understood well, you need to have 2 full employed people to create a co-op, and so it's not so easy to have this kind of money at the beginning.
And one question from Vuk from Lithuania, if I'm right. How do you work with restaurants? Are they willing to hire coops instead of Uber Eats, Deliveroo, etc.? That's actually what I also wanted to ask. Like, how do you compete with? You answered it partly already, but how do you compete with the with the big gig companies, basically?
Okay, at first, the restaurants who wanted to work with us, it was because of their soul. Really. I mean, they didn't want to work with Uber and Deliveroo because they knew what they were. Then now people are joining or using as a restaurant or companies because Uber and Deliveroo, they're not respecting them, as I can say. At first, they were aiming, when I say those gig companies, they were aiming every restaurants, the small ones, the good food, the restaurants and such. Now they're working with McDonald's, Burger King, and those companies.
Interessieren sie sich eigentlich nur noch für die Riesenketten, Burger King und so weiter. Und für die kleinen Restaurants haben sie gar nichts mehr übrig. Also sie finden gar keine...
Like the digital tool, they have problems to have an answer from those big companies. Also, the prices. Gig companies, they take 30% of what the delivery contains. Us in Bordeaux, we consider that the added value of the delivery is not our work. We are not in the kitchen. We're not doing anything in the kitchen. So what we say, we're delivering whatever is in the bag, good, not good, cheap, expensive. It won't change the way we're going to deliver. So we keep the same price. So what we say to the restaurant is like, if you manage to say to your customers that it's better to order when you're 2 people or family, etc., we are cheaper than Uber and Deliveroo because it's always the same price for us, the delivery. We don't take any percentage. So this is how also we compete, and the restaurants, they understand this. Also, we are not going, in Bordeaux, we are not doing this. In other cities, they are doing it. That's the 30-minute delivery promise. In Bordeaux, like we created a company to be comfortable, really. We're not lazy, but we don't like really difficult things. So we say to the restaurants, your customers has to order before 11 to get their food before 12:30, and they have to order before 12 to get their food before 1:30. And this is how we also can have a big bike and take many orders. We have everything to keep it warm or cold, and we can go around in the city, give everybody their food in time, and manage also to earn enough for us and to be to have a good price for the restaurants.
Great, thank you. I will hand over now to Blaž, my colleague.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur. It was really nice, really good insights. Also, I will just finish this in English and then I will continue in German. If you have any questions, we will then handle them later on. Then just please point out to who do you want to address the questions.
Immer dazu schreiben, bitte, an wen die Frage sich richtet.
Genau. Ja, super. Wir machen jetzt weiter mit Bernd und Gabi. Sie werden quasi Ihr Modell vorstellen, also die Lekton EG, die quasi im IT- und Kreativbereich tätig ist. Also wie haben Sie das aufgebaut und wie funktionieren Sie als eine Genossenschaft? Also Bernd, Gabi. Ja.
Okay, danke. Ich beginne. Danke für die Einladung und danke für diese Konferenz.
And thank you for this conference. It was very interesting and fascinating so far. I'm a founding member of the Lekton EG Cooperative for IT and creatives. There were 4 creative members, founding members. A 5th member was then added, and in 2020 we added a staff member. Now I'd like to share my screen. I'll try to do that now. Is this working? Can you see my screen? Can you all see the screen? Yes. So what was our special situation to start with? We were all independent entrepreneurs, and we've all been working freelance for many years as self-employed persons, and we took all our idiosyncrasies into this cooperative. And one thing is that everyone used to work independently for themselves, so dividing labor, sharing labor was not something we knew. Customer acquisition, customer contacts, and our own work as graphic experts and software developers is something we always did alone, on our own. And that, of course, was a learning process that suddenly we started to delegate some activities. And of course, self-organization is a major asset and a good quality, and we wanted to make sure that everybody will share in the responsibility. But still, we found out that to set up a project management, for instance, so that you have one function that looks after organization, make sure there is some internal adjustment, and that there's one voice speaking externally with customers. As I said, we all had large experience and long experience in working independently, and we contributed our own resources to the cooperative, our networks, our customers, and also our competences. And that were our own activities, our professional work as a programmer or graphic artist, but a lot more. We had one graphic person who was very good in doing Excel sheets. We had one software developers who was able to implement websites and web servers. So we had various different resources, and we could harness many synergies from that. That was very good for our customer projects, but also beneficial for our own organization. As software developers and graphic artists, we work in a knowledge-based industry, And suddenly, it was a big advantage that there were so many colleagues with which you could exchange and engage. We could ask questions, we could ask them for guidance. There was some exchange, some sharing of things, and that, of course, improved the quality of our services. And in the cooperative, we also started last year to set up internal further education and training. So we did mutual education and training. One programmer gave a presentation on how to generate plugins in WordPress. We had a graphic artist who's very well versed in geo information system, a geolocation system, and she gave us a presentation on that. And these were things that were important and showed us that actually you can gain a lot if you share knowledge within the cooperative, because everybody will enhance their learning curve, and then we also can know better and find out better what are the talents and abilities inside of our organization, and that also allowed us to better adjust and align the services we provide.
Dafür gibt es, glaube ich, keine englische Übersetzung. Also wir haben eine Native Speakerin gefragt, aber
And I am not sure what the proper word is in the English language. What is it? We're all independent, self-employed, and we were living in precarious situations up to then. And most of us wanted to change to employment to actually have all social benefits. We had a debate about growth within the cooperative, and there was a lengthy debate. Do we want to grow? How do we want to grow? And then we came back to what was most logical, namely, we thought we could take up people who were similar in their thinking, similar in their structure, that were used to be self-employed, that have their own customer base they can contribute, and who were independent of the. Unfortunately, we're getting very bad sound, so we cannot properly hear the speaker. I'm not sure whether everybody's affected or just us here, but we couldn't hear the speaker right now. I will continue now. Self-determination and free work, independent work is very important to us as much as openness and transparency. And that relates to the economic funds and how they are distributed. But we choose a form of cooperative because here this allows us to reconcile and combine non-material and material economic goals. Because initially cooperatives were set up as organizations that were to enable and promote solidarity management and work and activities that is based on solidarity, because together you're stronger than on your own. That is something we felt very strongly as former self-employed persons. There were so many positive repercussions that came from solidarity management, working on a basis of democratic solidarity. And that reflected in the size of the projects we could accept and take on, and also in the quality of the services we then provided. And as I said, we were able to improve the quality of our work. As I said, our members are the be-all and end-all. They're at the center of all our activities. That's a big issue for cooperative. It's all about the members. And if they fare well, then the cooperative fares well. The members are the democratic roots, the democratic basis of the cooperative, and they also have a controlling or monitoring function. And then the issue of taking the issue of cooperatives to the outside world. We want to reach out to others because we want to convey to them the message that we benefited from setting up a cooperative. And that is a message we want to spread, a finding we want to share. Not that things were all easy, but it's not as complicated as you would think to set up a cooperative. You need 2 founding members as a minimum. You need a very low capital contribution, you need articles of association, and you need this review or audit association. We are a member of Rückenwind, and Rückenwind Association places a focus on commonweal, solidarity, ecological sustainability, social justice, etc., etc. These are the values that are being upheld, and these are the values we can subscribe to as well. Okay, so much from my side. I will pass the floor to Bernd, and Bernd will go into the further depths of our own structure. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Bernd. I'm also a founding member of the Lekton Cooperative, and I think we can deal and handle the questions that come in afterwards, after my part, together. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Absolutely interesting what I've had so far. And tying in with what Gabi said, I'd like to go into some details and show you some slides as to how our model works economically. How this initial self-employment, the sales we generated, the turnover we made, how this is being handled in our new structure and how that is distributed, and what is our answer to the pressing question of how is profit distributed, working time, in a fair and balanced manner. I'll try and share my screen with you. I think you should now see that in the full screen mode. Can you? Yes. I called my part the shared columns, and they're in English, the screenshots. And here, in English, there's 2 meanings to the word columns, because they're the columns in a building and the columns on a piece of paper. And it's to show you how we create transparency and how we can answer the question how the various revenues and sales made can be distributed. As you see, it's a bit skewed or slanted, so there is no even distribution. We started out on very different individual situations. In 2018, when we started, that's what it looked like. There were 4 people. Today, we are 6 working for Lekton, and 5 are members of the cooperative. We started in 2018 as 4 people, and with quite significantly different ideas and 2 questions. It was clear we wanted to actually overcome our precarious situations as single individual self-employed persons. Well, we did make money, but you couldn't fall ill, or you couldn't take leave or afford to lose a customer. So then we decided to set up and form the cooperative to work together. We all knew one another, so we had this basis of trust. We could confide in one another. We had worked on projects together, and we asked ourselves, how much do we need in terms of net revenue, and how much do we want to fund from the cooperative? And that was the starting point. We defined individual needs and how far are they covered by other works, activities or jobs, because most of us had other sideline activities, and one of us earned 50% of what they made outside of the cooperative, and this is still the case. So going forward in time, and let's have a look at how the situation looks after 2.5 years. Here you see the annual turnover for 2020. You see that there's new people who have been added, and you also see that there's a huge differences. This has not to do with the fact that person number 2 and member number 5 are very poor, and the two outer columns are very rich, the persons behind them, but it's that those two people with the lower columns have different jobs, other jobs, and one member even has 2 other jobs. So altogether, they do generate the net income they need, and they can live off well. And with Gabi and me, we derive the majority of our revenues from work in the cooperative. As Gabi said, we all were self-employed, and we were accustomed to satisfying our customer needs through our own individual pillars, and that changed. Because obviously there's some overhead if you set up a cooperative. We are grateful that we are a member of the Rückenwind Association. That is absolutely helpful. They gave us support, but it does cost money, and it also costs server infrastructure. But that's all it took. Being self-employed, we were able to take our workstations, our desk, our tools, and contribute them to the cooperative. A sidestep here on what was said earlier in the debate. How can you be competitive as a cooperative? Now, in our case, you can see that compared to other more classical companies, we operate on a very small overhead. And this is something we had learned from our previous self-employment. And these overheads, of course, have to be shared. And how do you do that? We decided that the overheads will be shared on the basis of revenues generated or sales generated. You could have opted for the version on basing that on your earnings or income, but then we decided that we take a percentage rate of the turnover and apply it and distribute it in terms of overheads. But of course, the actual result can only be known at the end of the year when the financial statements are prepared. And at the end of the year, this is all recalculated and made sure that you pay your proper share. So we've paid for our overheads, running costs are covered, and then we have the annual turnover minus the overhead, and then we have costs, but also since the summer we started to actually build up reserves for future projects that might not be sufficiently funded for future payment of work that is done. So we have a cushion and we are accumulating savings for the future. But still this amount is very small, 5% of last year's turnover. In the startup phase we didn't do that at all, and now we're planning to step up that amount to 10%. So how much again do you pay? We again took the turnover or sales as a basis, and those who had higher sales had to pay more. So we paid for the second pot, if you wish, or column. So we have the annual turnover minus the overhead minus the savings, and we end up in the results for the individual. So if you compare that with the actual earnings situation, but it's not quite identical. What you can see is that we don't work profit-oriented, but revenue-oriented. So we make sure that everyone earns as much as they need, and also from the cooperative and from other jobs. But that is the main principle. As we heard earlier, we do what we do. We develop software, we do graphics, we generate turnover, and then from that we don't pay fees on contract basis, but most of us are employed through service contracts. They have a regular income, they have social security, social protection, including the possibility to take the sickness leave or holidays or whatever. And then what we generate is reflected in what we earn, and it is defined a priori how much everybody wants to earn. But then there's differences among us. At the end of the year, somebody made more for them out of the cooperative and others made a little bit less or paid in less. So that you need some columns that are slightly in the minus and some that are slightly plus. And what is the big advantage of such an organization, of such a joint organization, is that you can help yourselves mutually if you have weaker times, if you have less projects to work on. Of course, we try and do that for 1 year, for 2 years. We equalize the pluses and the minuses, and a fair distribution amongst ourselves in relation to what we contribute. But of course, this gives us lots of flexibility during the year. Okay. My next slide gives you some insights on taxation. So we pay income tax from turnover and social insurance contribution, etc. So wage-related expenses and not operational expenses. This is in the light pink column. And then what you see is the net income, what remains, in dark pink. And that is more or less congruent with what we had actually set out in our plans. Every one of us makes a little bit more. Some make additional earnings because they have different jobs and do this job only as a sideline activity, as I said. And with other members, the situation is different. The cooperative work is their mainstay activity. And this is the result here for 2018. We are quite heterogeneous in how working time is distributed. One other colleague has 2 other jobs. Currently, she's on maternity leave, and I would assume she would carry on with her other 2 jobs when she comes back. We have somebody who's not yet a member of the cooperative, but he's in our model, he's employed, and the system will be the same. We apply to him perhaps one sentence. Before we employ somebody, we always vet that person, and we try to practically test cooperation. Do we work together? Do we fit together? Can we work together? But it is a possibility indeed to become a member of the cooperative. So much for a very brief overview of how this works in our cooperative. It is a specific situation. We all used to be former self-employed people. We had a customer base and turnover which we were able to contribute to the cooperative, because you need a business plan to set up a cooperative. And that was quite easy for us. We took 3 years as a basis for assessment and as a basis for the forecasts for the future. And hopefully things won't get worse, but rather better. And that was our business plan we submitted, and that made the foundation of our cooperative quite easier. And that made it easier than starting from scratch. We had an existing network, we had existing customers, and actually they are quite happy that they don't have to work with one single self-employed person, but with a group of people who work together. So even for your external relations, you have a unique selling proposition here. So it was worth it from our perspective, and it could be a model for people who would like to do the same and try the same. And this is the reason why I gave this presentation here today. Thank you very much.
Am Ende. Und stopp mal die
Super.
Bildschirmübertragung.
Ja, danke Bernd und Gabi für diese tolle Präsentation. Wir gehen jetzt zu unserem letzten Teil, eigentlich die Fragen. Falls jetzt noch jemand Fragen hat an also alle Referenten, dann bitte die Referenten nennen. Nein? Okay, sonst noch ein bisschen technisch. Also wie gesagt, am Ende, wir werden das Video online stellen, werden auch die Slides zur Verfügung stellen. Wir werden auch an euch noch einmal mit E-Mails zurückkommen. Das heißt, ja, also das ganze Material wird zur Verfügung gestellt. Okay, wir haben jetzt eine Frage von Eva. Also Eva fragt, aber ich weiß nicht, an wen das jetzt gerichtet ist. Eva fragt, ob der Trend zu agilen Formen der Arbeitsorganisation, also die man in Firmen beobachten kann, und die Bewegungen zu Genossenschaften irgendwie zusammenhängt. Ja, also die Frage ist eigentlich an alle Referenten. Ich weiß nicht, ob, also wer würde das gerne beantworten? Ja.
Ich kann es versuchen. Also ich würde sagen, jein. Wir kennen es ein bisschen unter dem Begriff agile Softwareentwicklung. Und dort ist die Grundidee ja eigentlich die, dass man ein bisschen von der Vorstellung abgeht, man macht einen großen Plan, ein riesiges Pflichtenheft, was alles die Software können soll. Und dann beginnt man erst zu tun. Und agile Softwareentwicklung meint, dass man den Prozess eigentlich im Laufen erst gestaltet und eigentlich erst kurz vorm Abschluss der Entwicklung genau weiß, wie die Software dann aussehen wird. Das ist so ein bisschen das andere Paradigma der agilen Softwareentwicklung. Bei uns spielt es eine Rolle, wobei wir auch also weder Gabi und ich sind jetzt die Developer bei uns, aber unsere Developer sagen, das ist auch ein bisschen ein Hype. Also Software sollte auch von Anfang an gut geplant werden. Wir können das von unserer Organisationsform insofern gut umsetzen, so agile Prozesse, wenn es darum geht, Leute dazu zu holen oder Kompetenzen dazu zu holen, weil wir eben dieses arbeitsteilige Verhältnis jetzt zueinander haben und damit auch sehr flexibel reagieren können in der Softwareentwicklung. Also jein, die Form ist sicher nicht schlecht dafür.
Super, danke Bernd für die Antwort. Die nächste Frage ist, das ist wahrscheinlich an Karl, also ob Genossenschaften Alternativen zu Aktiengesellschaften sein können im Sinne eines gerechten demokratischen Wirtschaftens.
Karl, du bist noch auf Stumm.
Du bist auf Stumm noch.
Entschuldigung. Ja, würde ich meinen, aber es gibt dazu unterschiedliche Ansichten. Es gibt in Deutschland die Regionalwert AG und der Matthias Hiss, der die betreibt, ist kein Freund der Genossenschaftsidee zum Beispiel, und die Regionalwert AG verfolgt auch gute Ziele. Wie ich vorher schon gesagt habe, die Genossenschaft als Rechtsform per se bringt keinen guten Menschen hervor. Ja? Es kommt darauf an, wer die Menschen dann sind, die diese Rechtsform benutzen. Die Genossenschaft als Rechtsform ist günstig, ja. Und unser Anliegen als Verband war es, oder auch unsere Gründungsidee ist es, die kulturelle Errungenschaft, die in dieser Rechtsform steckt, von ihrer Gründung her als Selbsthilfeorganisation, das einfach zu nützen. Von der Rechtsform her gibt es günstige Voraussetzungen, ob das aber wirklich dann kommt und ob da auch Alternative zu einer kapitalistischen Aktiengesellschaft entsteht mit auch einer ökonomischen Power, das hängt von den Menschen ab, die das dann umsetzen. Wir glauben, dass wir ein paar super Beispiele haben. Eines habt ihr ja gerade kennengelernt.
Super, danke Karl. Und hier ist noch eine Frage, die nachgehangen wurde, und zwar, ob das Kopfstimmrecht in allen Genossenschaften Standard ist.
Ist vermutlich auch an mich gerichtet. Also in Österreich gibt es im Gegensatz zu Deutschland übrigens, ja, in Deutschland ist das mehr eingeschränkt. Ja, man kann ein Kopfstimmrecht haben und in einem gewissen Ausmaß können einzelne Mitglieder mehr Stimmen haben als die anderen. In Österreich ist das Stimmrecht in der Generalversammlung einer Genossenschaft sehr frei gestaltbar. Es könnte zum Beispiel, und es gibt es auch, zum Beispiel bei Winzergenossenschaften das Stimmrecht nach Anlieferung sein. Ja? Wer am meisten Trauben liefert, hat am meisten Stimme in der Generalversammlung. Ja? Bei uns ist es so, dass die meisten, fast alle ein Kopfstimmrecht haben, viele aber auch ein Kurienstimmrecht, das eben die unterschiedlichen Interessensgruppen in der Generalversammlung ausbalanciert.
Danke, Karl. Bezüglich der Frage zu agilen Modellen, Christian hat im Chat eine Antwort gegeben. Ich weiß nicht, Christian, ob du das vielleicht noch verbal äußern willst? Danke dir.
Ich kann noch kurz was dazu sagen, also zu agiler Arbeitsorganisation. Vor allem in den USA gibt es den Trend, dass man Genossenschaften gründet, die also halbdemokratisch sind. Sprich, die Leute, die Teilhaber der Genossenschaft sind oder arbeiten, haben gewisse grundlegende Partizipationsmöglichkeiten. Der Sinn dahinter ist vor allem, dass der Output der Menschen erhöht wird. Also da gibt es zum Beispiel vom Arbeitspsychologen Wolfgang G. Weber in Innsbruck Untersuchungen, dass sobald Menschen auch nur minimale Möglichkeiten haben, in einem Betrieb mitzubestimmen, dass ihr Output, ihre Produktivität, ihre Kreativität steigt. Also gerade in den USA hängt das tatsächlich zusammen, dass man ein scheinbar demokratisches Unternehmen gründet, damit die Menschen besser und mehr arbeiten auf freiwilliger Basis.
Super, danke Christian für die Antwort. Und ich glaube, hier gibt es noch eine weitere Frage an dich, Karl. Und zwar, kann es Hauptgenossenschaftler geben, die Mindestausschüttungen aus Genossenschaften beanspruchen können?
Kann ich mir jetzt nicht vorstellen, wobei ich sagen muss, so wahnsinnig lang bin ich da nicht dabei. Und ich habe schon gesagt, Genossenschaft ist flexibel und kann vieles gestaltet werden. Also ich kann mir das nicht vorstellen und ich bin mir nicht sicher, müsste man sich genauer anschauen, ob wir sowas zum Beispiel auch akzeptieren würden als Verband, ja.
Thomas hatte die Hand gehoben. Ich glaube, Thomas hat eine Frage.
Ja, hat er. Und danke, Christian, für das, was du vorher gesagt hast. Ich glaube, dass es eine Sache der Selbstausbeutung ist, was man mit Selbstverwaltung machen kann. Karl, jetzt habe ich die Frage vergessen.
Später.
Es ist nicht schlimm, genau, später.
Ich
melde mich wieder.
Genau.
Okay.
Hier komme ich dann noch mit einer Frage an dich, Karl, und zwar, wie weit wird eigentlich in Genossenschaften die Idee der Wirtschaftsdemokratie gelebt? Was würdest du sagen?
Ich meine, ich kann ein paar Beispiele erzählen, wo ich dabei war. Ja? Ein sehr schönes Beispiel bei uns ist die Dorfgenossenschaft ums Eck, die einen Regionalversorger in einer ländlichen Gemeinde gegründet hat. auch nachdem, also die Geschichte ist, dass da ein Einzelhandelskaufmann durch einen Billerbetrieb ruiniert worden ist. Die Gemeinde hat Grund umgewidmet und der Biller hat sich dort angesiedelt, also Rewe. Und ein Teil der Bevölkerung oder eine Gruppe dort hat gesagt, sie nimmt das nicht hin und sie gründet eine Genossenschaft. Und ja, also ich habe schon den Eindruck, ich war da bei einer Generalversammlung dabei, war im Herbst, coronamäßig so wie wir jetzt hier beisammen sind. Aber da habe ich den Eindruck gehabt, das ist eine sehr, sehr lebendige Demokratie gewesen. Wobei ich war bei mehreren Generalversammlungen dabei und wo ich den Eindruck gehabt habe, das sind wirklich Leute dabei, die zu einer Genossenschaft halten, auch in Schwierigkeiten und wo man den Eindruck der Solidarität richtig lebendig spürt. Ich weiß jetzt nicht, ob die Frage gut genug beantwortet ist. Aber man muss umgekehrt sagen, ja, wir haben auch Mitgliedsgenossenschaften, die Schwierigkeiten haben im Umgang miteinander. Ja, das gibt es auch. Wobei das nicht von vornherein undemokratisch ist, ja, weil man natürlich auch demokratisch streiten kann, ja.
Okay, super, danke Karl. Und ich glaube, jetzt ist die Frage bei Thomas aufgetaucht. Thomas, du bist auf Mute, also, passt ja.
Genau. Karl, ich glaube, jetzt kriege ich es zusammen. Die Geschichte war für mich immer, ich habe nur einmal eine Aktie besessen. Das war die von Steyr-Daimler-Buch, um dem Androsch zu segieren mit Schwerter gegen Pflugscharen. Ja? Ich habe nie eine andere Aktie besessen. Deswegen, also mir ist das nicht ganz klar. Ich habe das immer als Pfui empfunden, Anteile zu haben, obwohl ja auch Attac sagt, es macht bis zu einem gewissen Sinne Sinn, dass man investiert in Unternehmen. Ja? Also den Unterschied, den habe ich noch nie, den hat mir noch keiner erklärt. Was macht Sinn? Was ist wirklich viel Teufel? Und wo kann man mitmachen? Okay.
Es ist auch jetzt so allgemein nicht leicht zu beantworten. Ich habe zuerst erzählt von der Regionalwert AG in Deutschland, die eine Aktiengesellschaft ist, die sich durchaus als Alternative eigentlich eine alternative Angehörige einer alternativen Sichtweise auf die Wirtschaft und auch als Alternative zum Kapitalismus. Na, ich meine, weil bei der Genossenschaft auch das Wort Geschäftsanteil vorkommt. Ich glaube, dass das der Grund ist, warum diese Frage gestellt ist. Das ist einfach ein notwendiger Bestandteil. Ich kann, wenn ich ein Unternehmen aufbauen will, muss ich irgendwie zu einem Kapital kommen und die Geschäftsanteile sind auch das, was die Mitglieder der Genossenschaft zusammenlegen, damit sie starten können mit ihrem Unternehmen. Und da finde ich, habe ich überhaupt keinen moralischen Einwand dagegen, ganz im Gegenteil.
Super, danke dir noch einmal, Karl. Und noch wieder eine Frage an dich, und zwar, ob du nur kurz erläutern kannst, was ist eigentlich der Unterschied zwischen einer, sagen wir so, österreichischen Genossenschaft und der EU-Form?
Also die wichtigsten zwei Unterschiede sind, eine Genossenschaft nach österreichischem Recht braucht kein fixes Startkapital. SCE, eine europäische Genossenschaft, braucht 30.000 Euro Startkapital. Damit die ins Firmenbuch eingetragen wird, muss sie dem Gericht nachweisen, dass 30.000 Euro am Konto liegen. Und der zweite wichtige Punkt ist der, dass die Stimmrechtsgestaltung in der SCE nicht so frei gestaltbar ist wie in einer Genossenschaft nach österreichischem Recht. Und das ist mehr so wie eigentlich, wie es in Deutschland ist. Es gibt ein Mehrstimmrecht, man kann einzelnen Mitgliedern mehr als eine Stimme zuweisen, aber das ist dann gewissermaßen auch schon die ganze Flexibilität. Ansonsten ist tatsächlich sehr ähnlich, Wobei man vielleicht anfangs sagen muss, dass man in Österreich auch eine Sozialgenossenschaft gründen kann, jetzt in der Zwischenzeit. Das verdanken wir eigentlich dem europäischen Recht, weil vorher hat es nur die Erwerbs- und Wirtschaftsgenossenschaften gegeben. Und seit es die europäische Genossenschaft gibt, kann man auch in Österreich eine Genossenschaft zur Förderung sozialer Tätigkeiten gründen. Das haben wir aus dieser europäischen Rechtsentwicklung dann auch ins österreichische Recht übernommen. Ja. Übrigens, weil der Dimitri gerade fragt über Taxifahrer, in Graz gibt es eine Taxigenossenschaft. Eine Genossenschaft der Taxifahrer.
Dürften wir den Namen erfahren?
Bitte?
Dürften wir den Namen erfahren?
Ich habe es nicht gemerkt. Ich habe die zufällig kennengelernt bei einem Genossenschaftstag in Graz. Wenn ich das noch rausfinde, dann schicke ich dir den Namen. Ja?
Gut. Ich hätte noch eine kurze Frage. Weil vorher ist gefallen, man muss bei einem Verband dabei sein. Oder, also ich habe das sehr österreichisch gefunden, außer es nimmt einen kein Verband. Heißt das, es gibt für jedes, quasi für jeden Geschäftsbereich eigene Verbände, die, weiß ich, die einen tun sich mit Wohnbau beschäftigen, die anderen nur mit IT, sage ich jetzt, oder, also halt, wie ist das irgendwie strukturiert? Oder suche ich mir ich will eine Genossenschaft haben und suche mir einen Verband und frage, wollt ihr mich nehmen?
Bei uns ist es so, wir machen alles außer Banken.
Alles außer Banken.
Okay. Ja, dann es gibt einen eigenen Genossenschaftsverband für die gemeinnützigen Wohnbauträger. Mhm. Und der Rest ist eigentlich, machen alles. Ja? Also es gibt ja in Wirklichkeit nicht sehr viel, Raiffeisen und österreichischer Genossenschaftsverband. Der ÖGV ist der Volksbankensektor, also der hat den Bankenflügel der Volksbanken dabei, hat aber auch einen Bereich Ware, wo mehr oder weniger alles, alle möglichen Genossenschaften, Dienstleistungen und Ware, ja, wo alle Branchen vertreten sind. Und bei Raiffeisen ist es ähnlich. Ja. Die haben auch einen Kreditsektor und dann einen Sektor, wo alle Branchen vertreten sind. Aber wie gesagt, es ist ganz interessant. Raiffeisen, Volksbanken, es gibt den Nachfolger vom Konsumverband, das ist der Coop-Verband. Der ist wiederbelebt worden, der war mal sehr klein geschalten und dann eben die gemeinnützigen Wohnbauträger.
Also die Bank für Gemeinwohl wird dann nicht...
Ist kein Verband, diese Genossenschaft. Ja? Die sind übrigens verbandsfrei.
Aha, was...
Die sind anerkannt worden oder die sind gegründet worden, bevor wir anerkannt waren und haben ein Problem gehabt mit dem, die sind verbandsfrei gegründet worden, ja.
Ich hätte noch eine Frage auch an die anwesenden kooperativen Genossenschaften, wie mit also sozusagen Spitzen oder Spitzenzeiten, Auftragsspitzen umgegangen wird. Ist das etwas, was man sich quasi in den eigenen Statuten vereinbart? Wir tun jetzt nicht irgendwie Subcontractor nehmen, weil eigentlich würde es einem ja frei stehen, oder wie ist wahrscheinlich so, wie der Herr Staudinger vorher gesagt hat, die Rechtsform macht noch keinen guten Menschen aus einem, um es jetzt einmal plakativ zu sagen. Also steht euch das frei oder euch selber, oder habt ihr da gewisse Grundsätze? Also auch an Arthur und natürlich an Bernd bzw. Gabi die Frage hier.
I can answer this.
Ich beantworte das sehr gern.
Okay. I think you said first, because I don't hear you well, but so during the peaks, when there is a lot of deliveries, I mean, we need to anticipate, that's all. I mean, if you know at one time there are going to be many deliveries, you anticipate. Like us, at the end of the morning, there is always a lot of people, so we manage our time schedule for every worker in the co-op. Every workers on this time is working, and after people are stopping early in the day, and etc. But actually, yes, some other co-ops in other cities, they really thought at the beginning it was impossible to do it without using the uses of freelancers. But actually, you can always manage to do it. You always find a way to do it, even if it means like you have a big day one day, then you take the few hours you took, you did more, you take it back later. Like I mean, in our Coop, we have 8 weeks paid leaves. It's like an offering because we know sometimes we do more work and etc. And we manage like this. Like sometimes everybody's on deck, and when the activity going a bit down, we are in the holidays.
Thank you.
Ja, vielleicht sage ich auch noch was dazu. Aus der Perspektive, wenn man vorher selbstständig war, ist das Problem, das Auftragsspitzen darstellen, durch die Genossenschaft einfach entschärft und auch das Problem, das Auftragstäler darstellen. Weil das ist eines der Hauptprobleme irgendwie des selbstständigen Arbeitens, dass der schmale, also die Wohlfühlzone zwischen zu viel Arbeit und zu wenig Arbeit und damit zu wenig Geld ein extrem schmales Band ist. Und wenn man sich jetzt vergemeinschaftet und sowas wie in unserem Fall zu 6 verteilen kann, dann kann man natürlich auch diese Lasten und diese fehlenden Akquise-Zeiten für Einzelne abfangen. Und das ist einer der größten Benefits der Organisation, dass man genau dadurch mit der Organisation hier ausgleichen kann. Also sowohl die Täler als auch die Spitzen abfedern kann.
Ja, wenn ich da noch ergänzend dazu sagen darf, das war ja so ein Grundgedanke von uns auch, dass wir uns mit der Genossenschaft auch gegenseitig vertreten können. Also das heißt, es sollte möglichst 2 Grafikerinnen geben, es sollte 2 Programmierer geben, damit wir uns vertreten können oder aushelfen können, wenn es Spitzen gibt, beziehungsweise wenn einer krank wird oder ausfällt, dass wir uns auch gegenseitig vertreten können. Das ist uns jetzt noch nicht ganz gelungen, aber wir arbeiten dran. Und wenn es wirklich Auftragsspitzen gibt, also haben wir auch einen Programmierer eben im letzten Jahr dazugenommen als freien Dienstnehmer, der halt nur für ein gewisses Stundenkontingent jetzt für uns arbeitet.
Okay, vielen Dank.
So. Naja, okay. Ja, also ich würde sagen, wir sind jetzt schon fast 2,5 Stunden dabei, damit wir damit abschließen. Ich möchte mich wirklich ganz herzlich bei Karl, bei Arthur, bei Gabi und Bernd für die Zeit und für die
Und Christian.
Sorry, Christian, sorry, ich habe dich vergessen, sorry. Und Christian natürlich auch, danke Robert, wirklich bedanken für die ganzen tollen Vorträge und für die Antworten auf diese Fragen. Und auch natürlich bei allen, die dabei waren und sich die Zeit genommen haben.
Und den Dolmetsch. Auch den Dolmetscherinnen auch ganz, ganz vielen lieben Dank dafür. Ganz super.
Genau. Laura und Michaela auch danke dafür. Im Chat habe ich die Internetseite gepostet, wo die ganzen Materien zum Aufruf, also wo wir das Ganze hochladen. Wie gesagt, wir kommen auch noch mit E-Mails zu euch zurück. Und ja, Robert, jetzt hast du noch ein paar da.
Also von meiner Seite, ja, vielen Dank für die rege Teilnahme, für die tollen Beiträge und ja, also wie gesagt, auf Riders Collective, das ist übrigens unser kleines Projekt gerade, was wir machen, auch im Geiste von dem, was Arthur eigentlich gesagt hat, mit dem Gig Economy als die nicht unbedingt besten Arbeitgeber oder ohne da jetzt irgendwie zu weit rauszuschwingen. Aber schaut es euch an, da kommt noch einiges. Ja, von meiner Seite war es das.